Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Worst Church Ever. I am your host, Chris, one of your hosts. We are opening up a new format on the show, starting with this episode where I will be working with my longtime friend, lifelong friend, Nathan, and we'll be doing a new format. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't still be doing our deep dives on the biblical text, but it does mean that we'll be supplementing those with episodes that are much more conversation-based. And each of these episodes will feature probably 3 different segments. We're going to talk about things that may be trending in pop culture. We may be talking about things that are interacting with our theological journey, with our spiritual journey, and we'll be talking about things that are just sort of fun or just sort of trending in the moment within the perspective of, in a not too overbearing way, progressive Christianity, or I guess maybe not progressive in the sense that that we're both sort of cut of some complete leftist cloth. That's not what I mean. We're both committed to the idea that we ought to take Scripture seriously as it is. We ought to look at it for what it is. We ought to look at it deeply, and we ought to tell the truth about what it says and what it doesn't say. We're both committed to the idea of equity and equality and of justice, of welcoming people into the discussion rather than leading with any kinds of gospels of exclusion, which of course are no gospel at all. So this is the first episode of that format. This is an audio episode. We are talking about a few different things in this episode, and it was a lot of fun to do. It was a lot of fun to catch up, and this is, like I say, our first crack at this, so it's audio only. Our episodes after this in this format will be video episodes, which we think will add a whole new dimension to things. So we hope you enjoy this one as sort of the kickoff, and we hope you'll tune in next week for the first video version of this format of Worst Church Ever. So thanks again for listening. If you haven't subscribed, please do, and check us out on the socials and leave a comment, get in touch, let us know what you think. Take care.
Hey, how are you?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. I'm going to do this today. This is awesome.
So you're broadcasting live from the car, huh?
Well, I'm recording live from the car. Yeah, it's like carpool karaoke, but without the singing.
Yeah. I wish I could be next to you in the car.
Yes.
Looking at the dashboard, trying to figure out, what's going to pop up next on the lithium radio.
Exactly. You may be interested, or maybe you saw I posted a little Third Eye Blind on Facebook earlier.
I did. I was like, do I get into it? Do I get into the discussion, or do I just leave it be?
I saw the restraint.
I'm not a closet Third Eye Blind fan.
No.
Third Eye Blind fan is amazing, but I just know that there's some very stark opinions on Stephen Jenkins as a person.
Yeah, I don't know much about that apart from him being Carson Daly's half brother. That's all I know about.
That's actually new to me. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, no, that's definitely true. I guess they have the same mom, is my guess, because they have different last names.
I wonder if that helped.
It very well may have. I'm not sure which one it helped, because their first big album was kind of right before the TRL era, but yeah, maybe they helped each other.
Yeah. Again, one or the other, or maybe it was like Carson Daly going, I don't know who this guy is. Like, I know we share a mother, but I don't have anything to do with him.
That could be. The song originally was Semi Brother Life, but then they changed it.
They changed
it. Speaking of half brothers, just like Isaac and Ishmael. So there we go.
There you go. It all comes back to the worst church ever.
And here we are. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Worst Church Ever. I am Chris. That is Nathan, and today is the first episode of our new format. We were talking about calling it like a coffee hour. Nathan, you and I had joked one time about doing a podcast called My So-Called Midlife Crisis. I like that too.
Yep.
We are both in our 40s, and we both have little kids under the age of 2. And that's a whole different world. Plus older kids that we have to keep raising. So how old is your youngest, Nathan?
17 months. 17
okay.
months, a few days ago.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
And yours is on the cusp of 2?
Correct. Yeah. In a few weeks, he'll be 2 years old. So we're kind of at the same spot. My oldest is 16, and then my middle is going to be 11 soon. So what about your older guys?
Yeah, I've got a 15, almost 16-year-old, 14-year-old, just turned 14, and a 10-year-old. So it's like right there, right?
Yeah,
you almost have like two families, right?
Yeah, and you have an extra as opposed to I have 3, you have 4, right?
Yeah. I've got the fourth one tagging along there, and yeah, he's pretty cool.
Is it like your goal that they'll be like the Ninja Turtles because it's 4 boys?
Oh, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, you're right. And then I guess I have to be either Splinter. Oh gosh, I don't know if I want to be Splinter. Can I be Casey Jones?
I knew you were going to say yes. Absolutely. Do you know that there's a new generation of Ninja Turtles in the comic continuity?
Oh, I didn't know that there was a new comic continuity. I knew there was a new movie out.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of continuities, and Nickelodeon bought the franchise a couple of years back, but it keeps hopping from publisher to publisher on the comic book side because they keep licensing it to different companies, and so different companies have different timelines, and so depending on how you view canon and all that, but there's a I guess a possible future timeline called The Last Ronin, and this is not a spoiler. I think this is well known as far as how it's set up. Basically, Mikey is the last one; the other 3 are dead, and he's seeking vengeance, which is an interesting role for him as a character. And then at the end of it, a new group of turtles gets mutated, and their sensei is Casey Jones and April O'Neil's daughter, and that's kind of all I know. But that's yeah. So
that is, I think, remarkable because you would not think of Michelangelo as being the guy that seeks vengeance, right?
Exactly.
Like that would have been a Raphael move.
Oh, all day.
Right. So I think that's nice. I like that. I like that line of thinking. Okay, so I've got an interesting sort of parallel to my life now and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Let's hear it.
So just recently in Dover, New Hampshire, which is like 20 minutes from me. I live in Maine, but I'm right on the New Hampshire border. Dover, New Hampshire is where Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird actually created Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They just put up like a sewer tap in downtown Dover on Union Street to commemorate them, and they put like a little plaque up that said like, welcome to New Hampshire, the home of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something like that. And that was within the last couple of months.
That's awesome.
Dover area,
wow.
Check out Union Street. You can check out the hubcap
from humble
sewer.
The sewer, yeah, from humble beginnings, a $1 billion plus franchise, right?
Yeah,
and begun as satire, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I feel like it was like that Frank Miller type.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
If I remember the first ones, it was pretty dark. It was all black and white, and it kind of had that like Ronin feel to it. Yeah,
it was very indie, and it was indie, and they were satiring, I guess, like the Frank, like that turn, like you said, gritty vibe in comics. The teenage part apparently is a spoof on X-Men. Are teenagers, I think. And then there's something else. Them being anthropomorphic animals comes from, I'm blanking on the name of the other thing it's spoofing, but hey, it all worked.
Now, I mean, we're talking about this like we didn't enjoy the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 90s cartoon, which is my introduction. Right?
Of course.
I didn't have any grit. I didn't have like that. I was like, oh, this is I discovered that probably later on, like 2000s, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like when you listen to like the album where your favorite band got popular, but then you're like, wait, what about these other records that came out before? Oh my gosh, these are so much better, right?
Right. Ignoring the fact that it probably was a better record that made them popular than the first thing that they wrote.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's often the case. So you and I being, are you 79? You're late 79?
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm early 80s. So yeah, when I see that version, just even in any kind of artwork, I just smile because I just remember how cool it was, But do you remember?
Beautiful.
Speaking of it, Frank Miller, I think we were probably in about 4th grade. And so listeners should know we grew up together, live in different states now, but spent lots of time together as kids. And I think it was about 4th grade, right before the Batman Keaton came out. And we were all reading stuff we should not have been reading, like The Killing Joke and Dark Knight Returns and all that, 8 and 9 years old.
I feel like you actually loaned me Dark Knight Returns. And I had never, like, I don't think I'd actually gotten into comics before that. I think that was my introduction to comics, which is not necessarily the best way.
Yes.
It kind of heightens your expectations that Dark Knight Returns is what comic books are like.
Right. Exactly. And I guess it's no secret stake that we go right from that into liking Nirvana and Pearl Jam. And
of course. Because, like, you know, when you're into Frank Miller's version of Batman, and then you see the, you know, Batman the movie from Tim Burton, and then you see Burt Ward. That's not something that's easily reconciled, right?
No, it's not. Because you're 9, you don't know what campy is. You understand that satire too. It's just, what is this? What? Why doesn't Batman have muscles?
Do you think our kids look at the stuff that we did in the 90s? Like, if they looked at Ninja Turtles, or if they look even at like Tim Burton Batman, would they look at that with the same level of like, are you joking? Like, you like this stuff?
Some things for sure. Other things not as much. Like, so my older boy, well, and your older boy too, were the right age when the 2012 Ninja Turtles came out, and we loved that in our house. So that was like a good mix between a little on I don't want to say gritty, but a little tiny bit darker, but still super fun, you know, and light. So my son is into any kind of Ninja Turtle stuff. But yeah, there are definitely other things where he's like, oh, that's like something from the 90s or the 80s. And he's like, turns his nose up at it. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but we've definitely had those experiences. Like, you don't get it, man. This was awesome. And it still is, you know? And he's like,
you need to know your roots, man.
Yeah.
You need to know your roots. You wouldn't get the new Batman if you didn't have the old Batman.
That's exactly right. And by the way, that's a Nirvana song in the new Batman movie.
That's right. That's right. Man.
Well, speaking of that cognitive dissonance, I guess what we wanted to look at least in our first segment today, was kind of the idea that being this age in our 40s and having kids that are older and kids that are younger presents us with a couple interesting issues. One of which is it's as if we are raising two different sets of families in certain ways. And then the other is something that affects, I think, everybody our age, if they have kids or not. And that is, how do we spend our time well? And we have God knows how many other commitments. In our case, we have lots of children that we're committed to and wives, but there's also work, and there's also leisure, and there's also time to, you know, be restored and to recreate, and all those different things. And you put it in a way that I thought was really pretty insightful. It's not that one is necessarily good and one is not. It's that there's lots of competing goods. And how do you pick? How do you choose? So I'm going to turn it over to you as far as which one you want to dive into first, because I think they're both really interesting ideas for people at our stage, but really any stage.
Yeah. Maybe we start with the good versus the good.
Yeah.
I think it's such a difficult thing. So I think about it in these terms. Like, when I was growing up, I think I had a moral framework, you know, spiritually and socially, and, you know, socially, like, what is that? Socially, maybe even philosophically, like, to make a distinction between like right and wrong, like what's good and what's not good. And I think having Alex, who's now 17 months, and even before that, like, really kind of brought to the forefront how limited our time is. Because, you know, when you're chasing after a 17-month-old and chasing after these other kids and trying to get them to extracurricular activities and maybe having a hobby and trying to spend time with my wife, like, there is this sense of like competing priorities. And I don't know that I ever had that framework to make that distinction between like what's good and what's good. And how do you prioritize that, right? And how does that impact your relationships, right? So like, if I choose to spend time with my 17-month-old, which is good, like, how does that affect my career? How does that affect my marriage? How does that affect my kids?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Have you experienced that with? I mean, obviously, you've got the pull from the older kids, the younger, and the wife. The career.
Absolutely. 100%. And, you know, I know how hard it is with 3 kids, and I can't even imagine having 4. I don't know about your family of origin as far as this goes, but in my family growing up, I mean, my dad was always working. You know, he worked just
Mm.
a shit ton. And
Yeah.
at the same time, you know, he did make time. It's not like I didn't see him. It's not like he didn't make time. It's not like we were an afterthought, but I was always very aware that he needed to work, and the time he was away, he needed to be away. And so it was almost like I didn't even expect more. And it wasn't until I had my own kids, especially my first son, where I really kind of had like an existential crisis of like, oh my God, how do I balance making sure I spend more time with this child than I feel like I was given, but also still paying the bills and all that other stuff. And not even thinking at that point about, oh, you need to do yourself so that you're miserable when you're spending time with your family. And
Right.
that's another piece of this that we lose, because, you know, can you imagine like the generation, like there's saying to their spouse, you know what, I really need to focus on me right now. They didn't do it.
No.
They came home, if they drank, like that was what it was. And yeah, so when you add another kid and then interests, and then looking at your life and seeing where's it going, and oh my God, how has it been 15 years since my firstborn was a baby? And yeah, it's that old cliche of life being what happens when you're busy making other plans. But if you're not intentional about it, you will miss your kid's childhood. You just will. And I think our generation is more keenly aware of that than our parents were. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I don't even know I said no there. It's so funny. Like, yeah, no.
Yeah, I know. I do that too. I always do. It's like when people say right, like these weird tics that we have to like, I don't know where we learned all this, but yeah, go ahead.
That's spot on. I think there's a couple of things going on. So I think first of all, like, we have probably a much stronger, this is two white males talking about this, so this may sound like, you know, mansplaining or whatever, but
right.
I think that we're in an age where like women have been given a much stronger role, and appropriately so, right? Like women should be able to have the autonomy to not just stay at home and raise children, right?
Of course,
like, it should be a thing. Like you know, right? I mean,
yeah. And really, our generation of women is probably the first generation where that's accepted across the board. Now, granted, there are some quarters where it's not, but even our mothers had to fight like hell to emerge out of that old system, which is not to say you and I think that system has been completely dashed or the patriarchy isn't real and all that stuff. I don't want to qualify this with a million different things, but yes, our wives up with had a much different than their moms, and certainly than their grandmoms. But go ahead.
We're in the infant stages of finally getting there, right? And when I say finally getting there, I don't mean we're there.
Right.
It's like we're in the first chapter of what it might look like. And so I think that's one of the growing pains, is saying, like, you know, as a man, I don't just get to come home and put my feet up and drink, right? Or go to the golf course all morning.
Yes.
Right. I need to have that interplay where my wife's dreams and her aspirations, and if, you know, if somebody's listening, they're not married, it's not just, you know, single people have to deal with this too, right?
Sure.
It's not just married individuals, but it's this idea of like, you know, equality, and then you add to that the equality of a child, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their needs are important too. Like I have a 15-year-old that was given the opportunity to sit in like a college recruiting thing yesterday. It was part of his esports team, and he had an opportunity to do like a little showcase. Well, of course I need to start trying to make time for that and see if I can adjust to it. But it means rearranging the schedule a little bit. And I don't know that we necessarily had that much of a priority on children growing up either. I mean, not that I wasn't a priority. I think you and I were both seen as priorities, but I don't know that parents live their lives just to take their children to soccer practice.
Definitely not. Yeah, you're 100% right, for sure.
And if they did, it was like fall soccer. And now, gosh, I was talking to somebody yesterday. He's like, it doesn't end.
No,
I have fall soccer, and then we have indoor soccer, and then we have spring soccer, and then we have summer conditioning. It's like I count the weeks between soccer seasons, not the months.
Well, and to that point, Nathan, do you ever feel, speaking of guilt also in how you prioritize your time, do you ever feel guilty?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I don't know. Like, what are you like? I mean, what are the things that you feel like I don't know, break your heart that you can't get to.
Yeah. Like, I think when my older son was playing t-ball and baseball as a younger kid, I think I missed one game, and I still, isn't that, you know what I mean? And that's a little bit of my own stuff, obviously. Of course, that game was 4 for 4. Or I remember wanting to sign him up for soccer when he was 6 or 7, but the only league in town was like that had open stuff was like ridiculously expensive, and I could tell at 6 or 7 it was going to be one of those, this is your whole life. And I'm like, my kid still likes to have fun doing other things. And so, but you wonder, oh my God, what if I had pushed there or not pushed there? I guess what we try to do is say, pursue whatever you want, and we will do backflips to try to make it happen. And then obviously, as you and I are speaking on a podcast to other adults, I feel like we have to always throw in there the caveat that we understand that we're very privileged to be able to say, I can sign my kid up for lessons or whatever it may be. But you don't want your kid to fall behind, because when we grew up, we grew up with the promise of, if you do in school and if you have extracurriculars and blah, 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 you'll go to college, you get a job, and you'll be a bright, shining, gifted star that you are. And we know that's not true. It wasn't true for our generation, and it's certainly not true for this generation, because, we even question the value proposition of college itself and all of these other things. So we're holding in tension, wanting our kids to have that stacked resume. At the same time, we're questioning if it's worth it. And I guess for me, one of the things that I try to just keep grounded with my family is making sure no matter what we're doing separately, we have consistent time that we're together and that we're making, good memories and doing good things, I guess,
Yeah. I think there's maybe some value in saying, like, as a family, or, whatever that looks like, family unit doesn't have to be the same for everybody, but
sure.
Like, as a family, what are our values?
Yeah.
And what does that look like for us to live those out?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the values that we have, at least I hope that we're instilling in our children, is like one of being kind to each other,
mm-hmm.
and being brave, and speaking to each other with truthfulness and courage. And like, not all of those necessarily line up with activities that we're doing. So it's like, maybe I don't need to stress out so much about my kid getting into every single extracurricular activity, because he's really kind.
Yes.
Right. That's the kind of person I want him to be. I don't need him to be an A student. I mean, I'd like him to be, because I think that opens up opportunities for him to be hardworking and diligent and all those other things. But like, is he going to be kind to his classmates and to the people around him? Like,
mm-hmm.
is he going to make the world a better place? And I think that's maybe the crux of it, is like coming down to lighting up values that you have for yourself and for your family. I don't know. Like, do you have any values that you either like expressly or, implicitly, or maybe just even unspoken, that you have for your family?
That's a great question. I think, one of the things my wife says to me a lot at the end of the day is, our kids, they're so kind, and I think there's a couple reasons for that. Obviously you hope that it's because you're a good parent, right? But you and I both are on these, our families are on these spiritual journeys. We are trying to raise our kids in the love that we feel and know from Jesus, minus all of the hatred and bigotry and bullshit that people have done in his name, right? So we're doing kind of like heavy lifting, and we're white males and we get that, but like we're in that, reconstructing from having geeked. And we have good conversations in our house about, like, look, this is what Christians in the past have done and said, here's where they were wrong and here's why. And, we can even talk about having empathy because of where they were in their own life. And, in the podcast up until now, I've been looking so much at cycles of trauma, right? And how that makes you treat other people like shit. And so that's all baked in. But I also find, and I don't know if you see this too, I find that our kids' generation is, I think it's because of parenting, but I think it's also because of just the things that are, the values that are being cultivated in school and other places. Our kids accept out of hand, there are people of different religions and races and sexualities and gender expressions. And that's all great, and we should embrace one another, and we should love one another. And it's like, shit, the church has been trying to figure this out for 2,000 years. My little daughter, when she was 4, she figured out that that one of her teachers was gay, and she's like, oh yeah, no big deal. And my daughter, I don't know what her sexuality is. I don't know if she knows, but she at 10 wears pride flag hats because she wants her friends and her teachers who are LGBTQ to know that she's an ally no matter what else she is. So
awesome.
Yeah, and that's not something that I said, okay, here's this hat, go wear it and be political. It was more like, I want people to feel welcome and safe around me, so I'm going to show them that I care, So
and for your daughter to embody that as a 10-year-old shows that, like, whatever else you're doing at home, right? Whatever activities and whatever, time management issues that we're doing, at some point in time, you have to look at that and be like, my daughter's making this autonomous decision, right? To be loving and to be kind and to be inclusive. And that must feel great.
It does. And you know what else it does? And this is something that ties me back to my faith, is it makes me feel profoundly grateful. And so on any given day, when I have a million questions about how God is working or not working in this situation or that, in the world or in my life or whatever, at the end of the day, I think about my kids as they fall asleep, how good and kind they are. And I'm just driven back to gratitude. And maybe that's the best spirituality there is for us as Christians, or just as people.
I love that, because it's the idea of looking for the places where meaning exists. Right?
Yeah.
I love that. And how can you not be grateful for that?
Yeah.
Where there's meaning, any meaning.
You come back to gratefulness. And I think one thing I said in church yesterday was, we look in the world for miracles and for evidence of God moving. And sometimes we forget. So the scripture yesterday that I looked at was Matthew 5:16, which is, let your light shine so that all will see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. And the light that went on for me with that is, if we are doing what we're doing out of love for humanity, out of love that comes from this gratitude for being part of this and for being children of eternity or of God, or whatever word people like to use, the good deeds that we do will shine a light back to God for people. And we don't have to argue about religious, realities or whatever. We don't have to get into all the crap about, I said in church yesterday, please do not fight about Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Please stop please stop dimming the light that's in you so that you can judge the darkness in others, that kind of thing, Just do the stuff that Jesus did, or do the things that he calls you to do. And nowhere do I see Jesus, pontificating about making sure people know everywhere that they're going wrong in your limited, time-bound, earth-bound, denomination-bound, gender-bound view of things,
It's in the unabridged version. I'm just kidding. No, you're right. It's like, live a life that's above reproach, and not in a way that you're just trying to be like the Pharisees, where they're just doing good works so that they can then heap condemnation on everyone else.
Right.
Which I am prone to doing sometimes, even if I don't say it out loud. Sometimes I've got this internal monologue.
Sure.
Like, I'm doing what's right just so that I can take the high road, so everyone else should.
Yep.
But it's like, no. Like, do right for right's sake. Be kind for kindness' sakes. Be gentle. Like, I think about the fruit of the Spirit in this, and I'm really, we could probably have a whole episode on that. And I would love to just dig into each one of these. Like, if you look at a tree that's producing apples, that's a good tree. Like, I want to keep that tree around. If I have a tree that's supposed to produce apples and it's not producing anything, or the apples that it's producing are like terrible, like, I do not want that tree. You and I had the advantage of growing up in Allentown, Pennsylvania, right when there still were cornfields there. Like,
yes, orchards and everything. Yeah,
I feel like we were actually closer to the agricultural bent of humanity than we are probably today. But
sure,
knowing that there were fields behind me growing up and seeing the crop and like understanding what went into that, and then also seeing those metaphors played out in our lives, like I think that's huge. And like that's a total tangent, but at the same time, that's what we're saying here is like there should be something good. Like it's like fruit. It tastes great, and it's something that is welcoming and helps provide life to other people. And when you see that good fruit and it's able to be eaten by the world and used to sustain people and build them up and encourage them and give them life, like why wouldn't you be grateful for that?
There you go. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the way you share the love of Christ in the world. And, whether it's Jesus talking about shining your light or whether it's St. Francis saying, preach the gospel, always use words only when necessary, right? It's if you're producing the fruit, the goodness and the blessing of God will be evident to people. And they're on their own journey with God, and they will get where they need to be. And all you have to do is do your part of where you're at and seek to be what it is you're called to be. I think that's right. And I really like how you put that.
Yeah.
And something I said to my daughter this morning, there was a situation last night where something happened at home that she felt responsible for. It wasn't her fault. It was not even a big deal. But when kids are sensitive, everything's a big deal. And this morning she was tired because she was having trouble sleeping, and she's going in for her second ever violin lesson. And obviously she picked the hardest instrument you can pick as a 9 or 10-year-old. And I could tell she was tired, and it was early in the morning because she goes early for the lesson. And I said, hey, today, remember, be patient with yourself, and I said, you know what I mean? And she said, yeah, and that's the other thing I would throw out there to you and to myself and to everybody listening is, we have this priority, speaking of priorities and competing goods, of living the way Christ is calling us, but be patient with yourself, be gentle with yourself, be gracious with yourself, so that you model the graciousness of God and that you'll be gracious with others,
That's so good. That's so good. I think that probably helps with the prioritization and the regret and the guilt as well. Right.
Yeah.
Because, for me to look at, leaving church early to go to a soccer game or leaving the career track, whatever that means, to focus on family, or the opposite, staying at church and saying to your kids, hey, you know what, we're going to make this a priority, or your dad was I need to work to provide for the family. All those decisions are good.
Yeah.
And there's this trade-off that you have to look and reconcile that there are things that you just can't do because there's only 24 hours in the day, and most of those are spent sleeping. And so to give yourself a little grace and to look at it and say, instead of living with regret, I can live with gratitude for the moments I get with my 17-month-old. Right. I can live in gratitude with, hearing the violin lesson, right, over and over and over again. And I think that's super important. Actually, I give credit to my therapist. About a year and a half ago, he actually challenged me with that, and he said, yeah, sometimes it just comes down to making a decision. Right.
Yeah.
Because if you have all these things that you could say yes to, and you never really say yes to any of them, and you just sort of try to do them all, or whatever, or you don't say no to any of them because you just can't figure out how to have that because you don't want to let down somebody, or you don't want to let down yourself, right? That's that's a really hard place to live. But to actually say yes and to say no, I think that's the other part of it, and that can help free us up to say, I'm going to take the autonomous direction, right? To say hey, in this season of life, I can't commit to that, and I can commit to this.
Yep.
And to treat that with gratitude, and to be grateful that we even have the options, right? I mean, like you said before, first world problems here that we're having, that we actually have to pick between going to a soccer game or going to robotics club with our kid, or hanging out with our wife on a date. That's an awesome problem that we have to pick between those three.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm glad you said that. And I think that's a good place to kind of at least pause on this segment, because I think you've landed at the place that I needed to hear for myself, which is tying in that gratitude that we have these options, that we have these opportunities, and that we can choose to be present. Even though I might have 8 other things to do, when my 22-month-old should be napping, and I have designated that time period for myself and my work and whatever else. And here he is, doing literal headstands in his crib and smirking at the camera that I have watching him in his room because he knows, I can still be grateful because, like, you know what? That's time I get with him. That look, you and I both, our oldest will be out of college soon, and
yeah.
And I think that's this conversation can be one of continue, throughout our different episodes together, because it's going to be something that we, and I think listeners are we're going to continue to work through because it's the rhythm of life, You had a fun idea for the next segment. Was it about things that are trending? Was that the idea, Nathan?
Yeah. Either trending or like stuff we're just kind of into.
Yeah. All right. Why don't you go first?
Well, I got something interesting that happened. So I was at Five Guys the other day. Sorry, probably should have gone local or whatever, but I was at Five Guys, and suddenly I heard an Oasis song that I have not heard in forever.
Yep.
And I don't think I have ever heard it in a place of a business or whatever. And it was I Hope I Think I Know, which is a tremendous song. And I know you love that album, Be Here Now. Right?
Oh my God.
That's one of yours.
Yeah. The sheer bombacity of it was like, oh my God, life is worth living.
I've been revisiting it lately and just thinking about that particular album. Cause it's funny, like there's a big population of people that absolutely hate that record.
Yep. Oh yeah. And Noel Gallagher is one of them, whereas Liam loves it because he's Liam,
Well, yeah. And I think that's an interesting thing that I'd like to talk to you about is like, I know you're a Liam guy. I'm a Noel guy, right? So like we could have this fun argument. Like really, we'd like them just to get back together and hang out. Because that would be awesome.
Yeah. I guess I'm team Liam because I feel like emotionally, Liam really needs his brother. And I don't think Noel has that same tenderness. I think Liam is like a tender person. And I think Noel just appears to be way harsher in some way. Although, I don't know if you saw, there was a clip the other day of Noel on Rodeo Drive, and he's walking around just kind of shopping on foot. And an American fan, starts videoing and is talking to him. And this fan is unironically and very sincerely like over star. And it's kind of, cringy watch, right? And at the end of it, the guy asks Noel, like, it's like Noel doesn't matter because he's like, is this guy taking the piss or is this guy like real, And at the end of it, the guy says, okay, Mr. Gallagher, I'll wrap this up, but it's almost Thanksgiving. What are you thankful for? And Noel stops and he gives him a look, and then he goes and he shakes this kid's hand and says, I'm grateful. I'm thankful. And it was like, oh my God, like I never would have expected that from 55-year-old Noel Gallagher, So, and I only have the Liam stock. And so I have the Noel, but I have to tell you, Nathan, I asked the kid at the store, okay, I see you have this one. Do you have Liam too? And the kid goes, no, I have Noel. And I was like, oh, shoot me.
Oh no, Noel. Oh gosh.
Oh yeah.
The only thing is interesting about Noel is like he's clearly like a very talented musician, very talented songwriter. There's songs that he does that I'd love to hear the Liam version of them because I just think that like these are really strong songs.
Yeah.
And if I even go back to Morning Glory, like the songs that I resonate with most are actually the Noel Gallagher songs. And I don't know if that's intentional, like on Noel's part, where he's like, no, you don't get to sing these. These are just too personal for me.
Could be. Yeah.
Right. Or if it's like, maybe Liam just didn't want to sing them. Right. He's like, well, they're great. I'm going to sing them anyway. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about those, but Lock All the Doors is on one of his, one of his records that he put out individually.
Yep.
And there is a Liam version of that.
Yes.
That is not that good.
Yeah,
because it's super slow, right?
Yeah,
it's not as fast and cutting. And it's like, gosh, though, if Liam had been able to do that in the place that it got eventually, wonder.
Yeah.
That'd have been a better song for it to have to have both brothers bring what they bring to those songs. Cause like, there's just nothing like a Champagne Supernova. And I know we're like not British. So like, we just find that humorous. I'm sure everybody in England's like, what? That's how you say it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But there's something so like Liam makes like words in,
oh my God,
like 15 syllables.
Yep. Just the word shine. Like, I refuse to say shine any other way in my daily life than how he says it, which is shine, and it takes like 10 minutes to say.
Right. Which is why Around the World is 9 minutes and 20 seconds or whatever, right?
That's
like, it takes Liam that long to say each word.
And the funny thing about it is you can also see, as you listen to each album chronologically, you can tell on the first record, he is kind of first discovering it. But then by the third record, we didn't have this word back then, but it's become a meme, and he's self-consciously being Liam, you know? And to me, that gave it even more power. It's like, yeah, I know this sounds crazy, but I can pull it off, you know, and I'm and you're going to love it, you know?
Yeah. So I go back to this, like technically, only technically, who's the better singer? Not like, not who's the better performer, but who's the better singer of the two.
Well, Noel has the better range for sure. And his voice is definitely aged better, you know? So I would probably say Noel's the better singer.
And yet Liam's the better personality.
Correct. 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like when you hear an Oasis record, if you had a bunch of Noel songs on there and they're phenomenal, I love them. They don't have it.
No.
They don't have the thing that Liam brings to it, which is the 15 syllables on Shine, right? It's just not there. And it's like, Liam may not be the technically better singer, but neither is Axl Rose, who's like just iconic.
Yeah.
I'd even go back to like Pink Floyd, like David Gilmour versus Roger Waters.
Sure.
Too, but like David Gilmour, much better singer than Roger Waters.
Absolutely.
But Roger Waters, much better performer. I want to listen to like the deep cuts of The Wall and the final cut for Roger Waters, just like being him.
Yep.
Like it's just amazing. Not present day Roger Waters so much, but like 1970s Roger Waters.
You're totally right. And I think the only addendum I have to that as like such a nerd is, I guess, you know, when they were first together, Liam was like 19 and 20. And I think on those early demos and some of those early published tracks, his voice is beautiful, you know, at that young stage, before he develops the persona, you know what I mean? It's
before Liam became Liam.
That's right. You know, I think Noel will even say, yeah, you know, Liam would never have been anything without Oasis, but there'd be no Oasis without Liam. And as an American super fan, I was not exposed to a lot of the amazing B-sides until I was, you know, in my 20s or 30s. And it's because the only record store that sold B-sides and imports closed because they got busted for not paying their taxes and being a front for, I think, like drugs and stuff. And but so like there'll be songs like Stay Young, which I'd never heard as a kid, you know, and other stuff that are just phenomenal. And a lot of those are on the reissued new Master Plan album that came out a couple weeks ago. But
to tie it all in,
yes,
I think here's where it comes down to. It's like these guys just need to have gratitude, right?
Yep.
You can have these polarizing attitudes towards each other. Like you can be like, yeah, you know, like I don't really need my brother, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But if you just be like, gosh, man, we got to play in front of 250,000 people.
Yep.
And we could do it again. Like, I have no doubt that if they truly like just came back with love and gratitude and then made another killer record, I wonder if they'd find that next generation too, just because of who they are.
So I think what's happened is I think it's like an analogy to when we were kids and like we were teenagers and we were listening to like Pearl Jam or Nirvana or whatever. But you also had all those kids who were like wearing Jimi Hendrix t-shirts and all that. And like,
right.
I think there are a lot of kids, both in the UK and here, who have discovered Oasis since those. So I think the fan base US would be bigger if a proper album, right? Like you said, made with love. And if Noel took his time on the lyrics, okay,
right.
I think that not only our generation, but I think they would find a ton of kids who are like, I'm 15 and I just discovered Oasis, and oh my God, they're amazing.
Yeah, I think they'd have legs. I mean, I still think like Wonderwall is pervasive.
Yeah, everybody knows that.
And even if you just were on the back of that, like I think you'd find a really great audience for it. Okay, so I know we're running out of time.
That's okay.
I have a quick story. So I had the absolute privilege to see Oasis play. I think it was like 2002, 2003.
Wow.
So it was definitely on the decline side. So like there was not 250,000 people, but it was at Hard Rock Live in Orlando, Florida, and it was great, right?
Yeah.
It was a fantastic show. The brothers were doing the thing where like if Noel's songs came up, like Liam just would leave, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be here for this one.
Yeah.
They did not play Wonderwall. They didn't play it. However, they did their encore, didn't play it at the encore, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was going wild. So we're like, oh, they've got to do another encore. They played the track.
Shut up.
They didn't even come out. They played the track. The entire venue stays there singing to the track.
That is the most Oasis thing I've ever heard.
The whole crowd is just like going nuts about themselves, singing along with the recorded version of the thing.
Is
that
amazing.
Liam and Noel just didn't even want to play. They were just so over it. They're like, we're just gonna press play. Just not.
I love that.
And then they turned all the lights on and everybody left. It was just
that's amazing.
It was in some ways the most Oasis thing ever to just be like, we're just not even playing it. Like, no, you guys can sing it if you want to, but we're done.
That's perfect. That is perfect. I love that.
Oh,
I can't believe I had never heard that story from you, and I love that. Oh my gosh. The only thing I have that compares to that is having a quintessential Guns N' Roses experience where I went to a show and it was Axl and kind of like all the other guys that he hired when he was still fighting with Duff and Slash, right?
Yeah.
And so it might have been around like 2004 or 5. And they were coming to do a show in Philly at this First Union. Well, it would have been the First Union Center I forget what it's called now, Wells Fargo Center, I think. And opening for him was CKY, which is like Bam Margera's brother, his band. And they were local kids. They were from Westchester. And this was in Philly. And then after them was Mixmaster Mike from the Beastie Boys. No Beastie Boys, just Mixmaster Mike, which, I mean, I know he wasn't like from the Beastie Boys in the same way that the trio is, but you know what I mean.
Right.
And so he was mixing, and it was great. It was really good. And he was mixing, and he was he was doing his turntables, and 45, 50 minutes go by, an hour 15, and he's still doing it. Finally, he's throwing Led Zeppelin on there and spinning Led Zeppelin and scratching that. And I'm like, all right, something is up. This guy's going way longer than he's supposed to. Axl never shows up. They announce to the crowd that he's not coming, and a riot breaks out. And I was sitting near the mixers, with $1 million of equipment. People were throwing stuff from every possible, part of the mezzanine and everything like that. I think at the end of the day, I think they did about $150,000 of damage just to the soundboard. I saw a guy walking out of the building with a chair that had been bolted into the cement floor. And he said, I paid for this seat. I'm taking it with me. And it was insane. It was the most Guns N' Roses thing ever, because that's the shit they pulled in the 80s. They thought they would be over by now. He wasn't. And the story goes, and again, I have empathy for these misfits like Axl and Lee, like I love them. And because I feel like there's a tenderness buried beneath all that and causing all of that. But apparently he was in his hotel room in New York City where he had played the night before, and he got too wrapped up in the Knicks game on a leave and was watching it on TV in his hotel show. That's my completely 2000s Guns N' Roses story.
It's like, again, when you pay for something, you kind of want to have it happen. And when somebody doesn't show up, it's like, what are you doing? Right.
Yeah, right.
But at the same time, like,
it was almost better.
Gotten caught up in the Knicks game and missed something important.
Yeah, exactly. But I said, I said to my wife, she bought me the tickets like for Christmas or whatever. She was all like, "Oh no, your present's ruined." I'm like, "No, it's not. This is almost better, because I got the real experience."
This will make fodder for my podcast.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we had to like run out of the building because stuff was raining down on us because we were on the floor seating. Oh my gosh, it was awesome.
Like, you kind of have to go to a show from any of those folks. Like Axl Rose will be one of them, but there's probably a number of other personalities where you just like you kind of just don't know whether or not you're going to get a show or not.
That's right. That's part of the fun.
And that needs to be part of the fun. And that should be rock and roll for everybody, just to be like, I went to a show that they didn't even show up for. That's just and be grateful for it. Right?
There you go. Bring it back to gratitude. That's
like,
right.
I was there. I got to be a part of this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well said. Well, Nathan, what should we end on for the last couple of minutes? Any other good words or thoughts?
I think there's just the gratitude that I have just for getting to spend some time with you. Like, I think we've been trying to get this going for months and months and months, maybe even years. But certainly since we actually decided to do it, it was right before, it was like the end of September, right?
I think so.
And then it didn't. And it's a few months later. And I think, every week that it didn't happen, both of us would probably feel regret. And yet, like, this moment that I've had with you has just been great. I've really enjoyed it.
Me too, man.
It was worth the wait.
Absolutely. So, and maybe got a little wiser in those intervening weeks. And I know I've had more gratitude to reflect on, especially here between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So we'll wish our listeners, whatever they celebrate or don't, we'll wish them gratitude and joy right now, whenever they hear this and whatever season of life they're in as well.
Absolutely, brother. Best hour of my day so far.
Likewise. I'm going to get back to checking out my toddler. He's going to get back to doing what you need to do. But I'm glad we were able to have good priorities together today. So thank you very much.
Talk to you later.